When you say it's focused on the motor elements
Yeah,
in business,
I don't have the. It wasn't the business one. It was to do with music. In the group,
right?
in
Yeah.
the WhatsApp chat, they were asking about how music and I think it was dance, and the reply was around the motor, the focus on like the motor. And I'm thinking, my hands are doing this because, of course, guitar was the thing I taught, and
Yeah.
it's like, I was thinking, I was like, I never knew that how I taught was ecologically
Mm.
driven when I taught it, but it was never position your thing. Then again, when I say ecologically driven, no matter what, everything is ecologically driven. Even if I, yeah,
That's what I was about to say. We
I
could
was just as I was saying that, I was like, wait, ecologically driven. Everything is ecologically driven. That's the point.
Everything
Um,
can be ecologically explained. The same with
yes.
everything can be explained through active inference or motor schema and theories. So this is one of the conversations that I had with a coach very recently. Some people say, "Oh, well, I'm using the ecological approach, or I'm using active inference, or I'm using motor programs." Um, but if they're not aware of what it is and they're not familiar with the science, I don't think they could argue that they were being ecologically driven for whatever reason. I would say that they had a rationale that could be explained through ecological psychology, and it would more match the approaches that follow ecological psychology, like the constraints-led approach or differential learning or whatever you want to whatever you want to put in there. Like those things that are more ecologically driven, maybe you use those approaches more, but that doesn't mean that you are an ecologically driven coach or a CLA focused coach. Because even coaches now that do stuff that are motor program specific, they think about it through motor programs and schemas and retrieval memory stores. However they want to describe it, they could still do practice that could be explained through the CLA or ecological dynamics. So yes, yes, you could explain your previous coachings and teachings through ecological terminology, but I would argue if the practitioner wasn't aware or wasn't actively critiquing the science behind the approaches they were taking, then I don't think they could argue that they were ecologically driven as a purpose. Because the rationale wasn't there, but it could be explained through it. And this is where I think the philosophy gets very complicated.
Yeah.
I was talking to a basketball coach Friday, so 2 days ago now, and he was saying that there's a basketball coach, really high up basketball coach, that was like the go-to person years ago for anything science related, anything coaching science related. He was the go-to guy. Now, since the CLA has become more popularized and more people are talking about it, he's actively challenging the CLA because he doesn't agree with it. And I haven't got to explore who this person is because I forgot the name because there was so many other things going on, like welding of trampolines, far more important. Uh, yeah. Um, and so this person was critiquing the CLA. But from what this coach was talking about and what he understood from the conversation is that he was critiquing the behaviors of the coaches applying the CLA and how it looks the same and all of the other critiques about the CLA, not necessarily the perception action science from ecological psychology, dynamical systems theory, and all of the other really nitty-gritty nuanced information that we would talk about from ecological psychology. And to me, again, that is where we look at it and go, okay, we've got two things here. We've got the what the coaches do and the why the coaches do it. The what the coaches do is what most coaches talk about.
But
I'm
never
putting
the
that player
why.
over here. I'm putting this cone
Yeah.
there. This is our task goal. The what's can have different rationales, but still be the same. And the different rationales is where the different approaches come in for me.
Mm.
Because instead of it being, okay, this practice, we did this thing. We added this constraint. Okay, so the behavior, the what, could be exactly the same, whether you're CLA or your direct practice or your block practice. But what you do after that, or the points that you make during that is the why. Maybe you do a highly constrained practice and someone says that's not CLA because it's highly constrained, it's a drill. Okay, maybe if you measure this specific session right now, but if I stand there and ask them open-ended questions about different movement solutions to that highly constrained practice, well, now my behaviors are leaning more towards the CLA, but still in a highly constrained practice. Whereas another coach could be using that highly constrained practice and saying, no, you're doing it wrong. No, you need to do it like this. You need to move your arm like that. The what is still the same, but the why becomes more evident because of the way the coaches are interacting with the individual. And this is the nuanced conversation that I think a lot of coaches overlook.
So, with that, if someone asks the open-ended questions in a very like CLA way, and yet they don't know that they're doing CLA, does that mean they're not?
Not doing the CLA.
Hmm.
Again, depends on how you measure, but the way that I would see it, if it is if they're not aware, if they're like unconscious incompetent or unconscious like if they don't know, they don't know, then I don't think we could argue that they are using an approach because they don't know about it. It's the same as like anyone before the term selfie was coined and they were taking a picture of themselves, I don't think they can say, or they would be able to say, oh, yeah, I was taking a selfie before selfie was a thing. No, they were taking a picture of themselves. They would describe it differently. They would use different language because their understanding and their knowledge of the language that we would use to describe the behaviors was different. And so this is where measures and metrics differ. I think if the person is aware of the language, the terminology, or at least the behaviors, the rationales of the behaviors, then we could say, yeah, they were CLA coaches. But those that are not aware, I don't think we can put them in that bracket. We can say that they acted like, similar with Movement Miyagi's work with Jackie Chan and the karate things. Like he was very flowing movements, less right. There's one way to do it right. Uh,
Mhm.
so as they've said, he was as if he could, or as if he was, or like
Ah,
ecologically, but it wasn't because he wasn't aware of it. And that's where time becomes very complicated when looking back on things now with new terminology
yeah,
and new jargon, which is
yeah.
where the old wine in new bottle argument is.
Because when I look back at some of what I've done, what I did when I taught guitar, I could very easily explain it ecologically. Like the approach I was taking was open-ended questions. How does that feel? Like there was CLA a lot. There was a lot of CLA in what I did, to help them just get comfortable with the positions, how their fingers were feeling, like how did that sound? Like what was this? Like just very open-ended general questions as they were learning.
So
And
when you
going.
say positions, how did you get them to get there?
So usually I showed them, they usually had a chart. I had these big, massive, like, chord charts. Because primarily I did for most kids when they're first starting, unless they specifically request to do lead guitar. I focus a lot on chordal work because that's the fastest approach to get to playing something when they're young. Um, so that's a constrained practice in itself, going straight
Mhm.
into work versus lead. Um, and so that's what I usually do is I give them a chord chart and there's numbers on there to help them position their fingers. And it's like, what would you do? How would that work? And then I would demonstrate on my guitar. They would see my guitar and then they would kind of be like trying it out with different fingers and seeing what felt comfortable.
Mhm. So that's still like to me, that's still very highly constrained practice, which I'm not surprised because that's I imagine
Yeah,
how most music is. Um, but yeah, so there are elements of like the teacher coaching behavior that could be sort of rationalized through ecological
yeah.
psychology, but there's still a lot of highly constrained practice there. I mean, I have no idea how it would work in music because I'm not a music teacher, and my lack of knowledge in music will obviously hinder my ability to apply it to practice. But my main
It
question
would
would
be
be,
quite
hmm?
it would be quite difficult to do, I think, with there is the kind of actually no, that's not true. I was about to say there's a fundamental set of skills that you need to have. But then when I said that, I'm like, yeah, no, because just push down on a string and you can start making sounds. Like there are different, it's just about, and when I start teaching them, I'm just getting them to strum and get them comfortable with strumming and seeing how loud they can play, how quiet they can play, like just stuff like that. Especially when it's a much younger player,
Hmm.
is what I would start with, is just getting them to feel the guitar, how the guitar feels, like pushing down, letting go, pushing down, letting go. And it's often on maybe one or two fingers. It was usually with the older that I would start jumping into the more like, oh, let's learn a song. Here is your first chord. Let's teach you your first, like more of the traditional way of teaching.
Hmm.
But with the younger students, it was very different. It was like, we're just going to explore this hunk of wood with strings attached to it and see what happens,
I'd be really
which is so,
intrigued.
which is so interesting to think about it. And like, what would I do differently now if I was to teach guitar now? How would I approach it differently? What would I do? Because a lot of my students were already have already been teaching themselves. The older students usually had most of them had um, training before.
Hmm.
They had worked with other people before, and so they came in with a lot of preconceived notions, which took some time because I didn't teach like everyone else in the same way. Because a lot of them were theory based, whereas I was because I was completely self-taught, so I taught myself how to play, not had a specific teacher and a tutor. So I was very self-led. So I led with leading them to lead themselves and asking them what they want to learn, and it was very much directed in that way. Like,
Autonomy supportive.
yeah, that's a much fewer words.
But I mean, that's where the degree is, all that money, the piece of paper, the
Yeah,
time, sweat, tears. Yeah, yeah. I
and
can
arguing
summarize yeah, I can
and
summarize things into complex words, and then people go, "What's that mean?" And then you have to say it anyway.
yeah, yeah,
I'd
yeah.
be really intrigued to see a music lesson where there is a task that isn't directed at anatomical movements.
Yeah.
Like when I think about the Bab and Baz studies from Kelso, where I don't know whether you're familiar, but where they're tugging on the jaw when they're saying Baz or Bab, and then their tongue adjusts or their lips adjust to try and say the word.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's in the Introduction to Ecological Psychology book, and I've referenced it a few times in other videos. But that study obviously gives the individual a task: say the word Bab, and then the tester, the scientist, basically just makes it difficult. They pull the jaw and pull things, and so the person has to not execute an anatomical movement pattern to get BAB to work. They need to adjust. They need to self-organize their movements. And so when I think about that in playing music, if there was to be a sound that someone had to try and recreate or repeat or create in a different way on their own, they would have to self-organize their movements on the guitar or on whatever instrument they're using to try and recreate that sound. They would have to explore, probably, if they're not familiar with the tool, quite a lot to be able to recreate that sound.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be so. It reminds me of a drill that a piano teacher gave, liked to talk about a lot of how many ways can you play C?
Mm,
And like it was, how do you just play C over and over again and find different ways and how you can make it sound different and what you would do with it,
mm,
which is kind of in a similar vein, I think,
yeah.
to that.
I think it's exploring the movements of achieving that goal,
Yeah,
which is what the ecological approach would try and encourage. Where I'm really intrigued to see is where potential creativity could come out of that within music.
yeah,
Because for me in trampoline, like I asked the boy to do something on Friday. I said, so uh, essentially they were landing on their bum, doing a half twist, and landing on their bum before they hit the trampoline. So they're landing on their bum twice, landing on the bum facing one way, then they land on their bum facing the other way. And then I asked them, okay, can you do that and then land on your front, land on your tummy? And I didn't tell them how they should get to their stomach from the seat. So they're landing on their bum, and then they're trying to land on their front afterwards. So they've gone land on bum, half twist, land on bum, and then they half twist, roll to land on their front, rather than rotating forwards to land on their front. Because most people, when they've seen trampoline or they've been taught traditional trampoline, will go seat, rotate forwards to front. He
yeah.
has not. And he twisted to front. And I'm thinking, okay, so you've done half of a seat roller, which is a seat, full twist to seat, which is one of the skills that's on the harder badges. And he's chosen to do that instead of a seat to front, which is like 3 or 4 badges prior to the skill that he's prepping for now. And I'm like, right, okay, okay.
Mm.
And he did it. There was no issue with him doing it, but that was his solution. I'm sitting there thinking, wow. And another boy, I asked him, can you twist and land on your back? Right, so go from feet and then twist to land on your back. I didn't say how much to twist, but because of his previous practice, he was doing front landing. So he was rotating forwards to go onto his stomach. And then he rotated forwards and twisted half to land on his back. And I said, okay, can you twist and land on your back further? And instead of doing a full twist to back, which rotates backwards, he carried on rotating forwards, but did a 1.5 twist to back. So he's new to trampoline, like brand new to trampoline. He's only been doing it for 5, 6 months with Eastbourne Trampoline, and he did a 1.5 twist to back landing, which most people that compete on the national circuit in trampoline that are doing multiple somersaults in routines can't do. And I'm sitting here thinking, what sort of routines could we create with this sort of creativity already?
Yeah, that's so exciting.
Don't get me wrong, they're probably not going to look very nice because there is a reason that people don't perform those skills in traditional competitions. But I mean, a 1.5 twist to backhanding would certainly throw the judges for a loop. They would be like, how do I judge this thing? I've not seen this. And so in guitar or in music, what sort of creativity would you gain out of that? I reckon that's where most of the creativity comes from, though. It's those exploring sounds in their own room, like tapping or strumming or like flicking things using weird instruments or throwing stuff at it and going, oh, that was a cool sound.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool.
I also learnt a new skill in trampoline on Tuesday,
Oh,
which is so normally, like, okay, when I say backflip to you, what does that mean? Like, what do you imagine?
um, well, I imagine you go very high in the air and just go backwards.
So, what body part do you start on with a backflip?
Um, your legs.
Your legs. And
Yeah.
then you'd go all the way around to what? Land on your bum, land on your back, land your front, land your feet. Like, where would you?
Well, I would assume landing on your feet, because that's probably what you're supposed to do. Me, I'd probably land on my back. Probably wouldn't even try it.
Yeah. So, when in traditional trampoline, when you say back somersault, because it's not a flip because of jargon, technical stuff, they think feet, 360 degrees, so full circle, backward rotation to feet. That is a back somersault. And then you add shape, so you do a tuck or pike or straight. A backflip is arguably the same thing. But if you go to your back, it's a little bit further than 360 degrees because your body's gone a little bit further. If you go on your front, it's actually a little bit less. So it's three quarters rather than one and a quarter. Um, but most people think of a backflip from their feet going backwards. But you can do it from your stomach. And a traditional skill from your stomach, backflip to feet, is one and a quarter, and it's called a Cody. It's got a name for it, a traditional name for. And then you could do it from your back. So you could do a back pullover. So back flip to feet. You could go a bit further, back pullover to back, which would actually be a full back flip because now you're doing 360 degrees. But you never do it from seat. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to try and do a backflip from my bum. And it was so weird because I've never done it before. And when you land on your bum, your body typically leans forwards when you're going to rotate because you'll do land on your bum, land on your front, like I was saying earlier. You land on your bum, you rotate forwards, and you land on your front. And when you're going land on your bum, get back to your feet, well, you don't want to lean backwards. So the two movements that I'm most used to doing from landing from my bum is rotating forwards or coming straight back up to my feet. And I've never thought about flipping from it. And I'm like, okay, so how do I go backwards, but backwards enough to go over my head because I want to flip,
Because that
flip.
would be really hard because you'd have to really like you'd have to fall. It's almost like a roll. Oh no, it's a backflip. It'd be almost like a front flip.
A roll is a flip.
Cool. Yeah, I suppose it's a flip in the air.
Yeah,
It's a roll in the air.
that's how I teach people to do front flips. Like, do a forward roll. Okay. Now just don't put your hands down. Okay. Now don't put your head down. Now can you like jump into it? Okay. Here's a pool noodle. Now do the forward roll over it. Oh, look, you landed on your feet. You did a front flip. Cool. Um, yeah, so doing this backflip from my bum, I went from my bum to my back because that's like a quarter backflip.
Yeah.
And then I tried, okay, can I do it a bit higher? Yep. Can I land a little bit higher on my back so I'm getting a bit more rotation? Yep. Okay. Can I do it straight? Because rotating straight is far slower than rotating tuck because tuck is small, straight is big, big is slow.
Yeah.
There's loads of biomechanics in there, but that's basics. That's all you really need to know. The bigger you are, the slower you are. Um, and so I got round, and the first thing I did, which probably looked really silly, because it's the first time I've ever tried this thing, is I used my hands like a windmill to get me around. I landed on my bum and I'm like windmilling my arms around to get me round. And reflecting on that movement made me think, okay, so I got round. I got round fairly comfortably as well. But I don't think my hands like did anything, but it made me feel better. And if there was a traditional coach teaching me this thing, I probably wouldn't have been allowed to do that because you're meant to be in a straight line. You're meant to be
Yeah.
neat and tidy. That's trampoline. I'm windmilling my arms around, like proper windmilling my arm, like 30 revolutions, just doing like half a flip. But I did it. And then the next go there was less windmilling because I realized actually this isn't helping, it's just probably making me look silly. Um, but I got round. And even me, having trampoline for years, experienced loads of trampoline, looked online, well in the world, had fun exploring this different movement, being creative with the way that I could move my body on a bouncy surface. And it makes me wonder what the other elites, the other professionals, the other people that are doing well in their sports do with the creative elements inside of their sport.
Do they though? Like, do do they like actually play?
That that's the question that I've been asking myself, listening to some of these conversations about the constraints-led approach and the ecological approach, whatever you want to call it, applied in professional settings. most conversations seem to be that, well, in professional settings should be more constrained, but you'll still be exploring. I don't see why. Like, I understand you'll probably do practice designs that are fairly similar
Yeah.
because you're directing your practice towards the desired goals and outcomes and the tasks. But I don't see why you can't use amplification of error, where you can't get them to do things that are very different from what you're expecting, or giving or restricting their solution so they have to come up with something new. Because I don't know whether you saw, but in the Snooker World Championships, the pool table broke and fell apart. And
I
so,
did.
yeah, where the balls go into the pocket and then they go down, the pool rail fell off, just broke and fell off during one of the matches. So there's pool balls over the floor. Now, the players had to adjust their behavior because, okay, now I need to like move the balls out of the way and like compose myself to everyone else that's kind of shocked at what's going on. That's not something that they probably will have expected. But if they've trained in a situation where the pocket broke, they're probably familiar. And likely throughout training, they've had that experience. But if they hadn't had that experience, that could have freaked them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in the professional environments, if you're not used to, if the coaches aren't freaking the players out in different ways that might happen, you don't know how they're going to react.
That's so interesting. You were talking about amplification of errors. I made my instructor bounce in their seat on Friday with my voice training because on Monday I was like, yeah, so I played around with my voice as I'm always doing now. And on Monday I was running a D&D session and I was like, well, this is a traditionally masculine voice. So what if I reversed everything you've taught me and see what happens? Now, my previous voice was not exactly, it was more androgynous. It was kind of in the middle, little bit in the higher end of the male voice. Um, and so flipping everything I was taught is kind of like exactly what you were saying about the amplification of errors. And I'm like, what would happen? And it was very hilarious to hear my own voice sounding more masculine than it ever has been. And
Yep.
then that has made it easier for me to flip the other way, for me to like over feminize my voice, to be able to add more like feminization in and play a little bit more. Because right at the beginning, it was very biomechanical. It was very do this, like position your larynx, do these things. And then it was like it suddenly changed from the biomechanics to the here is a bunch of tools you can use, and then you can play with those or you can leave them. And it was really interesting to mess around with that and play with that a little bit and making the voice, bringing in more of my playing with my own voice. I mean, I'm still training and it's not going to stop. I'm near the graduation period now because I've been taught all of the things that I needed to learn. But
You've been given the tick boxes of
yeah,
stuff.
I have ticked all the boxes and I've done what I've been instructed to do. But obviously the journey's going to continue for the next multiple years because,
Life.
life. It was very funny. I had an experience and it was on the day of my appointment because we went to pick up a book that I got and I had to try to talk to my partner in a very busy like street and they couldn't hear me because my voice was too soft. And so it was interesting to go, and I needed to shout, but didn't quite know how without bringing back a lot of boom into what I was doing, which was really interesting and funny. And so I brought that to the
So
instructor.
have you practiced that?
No, not yet. That is something that I'm being shown next week, as that's the final thing to learn. I'm working on the other pieces that I'm now adding in.
So you're waiting to be told how to do it before exploring how to do it.
Eh, yeah, absolutely, because that's exactly a really good way of doing it.
Yep, yep. I won't poke too much, but that
You are aware that I've changed the name, the label I've given them to instructor,
yes, I did notice.
because that's what they're doing. They're just instructing. And then they're trying to instruct me on self-coaching, which was a bit funny. Um, and I'm just like, okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna coach myself through this now. And it's amazing how it switched. Like, I was waited to be told to self-coach before I started using my voice all the time, playing around. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. That, oh no.
It's like giving someone a box, right? Go sit in that box, and you can't come out of your cage until I give you the key. Once I give you the key, then you can go have fun and explore.
Yeah,
But you have to want to come out. It's so backwards.
it was really funny because when I was talking to them this week, it was like, yeah, so I found these things and I was doing these things and I stopped using this. So the passage that is usually used is the rainbow passage because it's got all of the possible syllables or words or all of the possible sounds we can make as a human.
Right.
Which I almost want to challenge now because I'm kind of intrigued whether that's actually true. But anyway, it has most of them. And so there was a lot of work on the Rainbow Passage. But because I had already been focused on like learning how to teach myself before I decided to hire someone to do it. I already knew the Rainbow Passage, but I knew it with an American accent. So now every time I practice it, I will slip into a more American accent because that's what I would do. So I've pulled myself completely away from that passage, unless it was in the particular lesson, and I'm just doing everything else so that I'm not slipping into the American voice.
So that's what I was going to say about the letters that you're reading, because even though you're reading the words, you can read the words with accents. And there are so many different accents and ways to pronounce certain combinations of letters that you can't have a passage that has them all, especially as there are other languages, because there are going to be ways that you can use your vocal cords and everything else that produces noise with a human in different ways. I mean, look at beatboxers. I'm sure some of the noises that beatboxers make aren't in that passage. So making the claim that a passage encompasses all of them is just ugh, outrageous. But
Hmm.
maybe the ones you are most likely to use in your day-to-day speech.
Yeah, I think that's probably more what was said, but presumed it's everything.
Yeah, the words they chose to use weren't as accurate as they could have been,
Very true.
which I think a lot of people do. Which is
Yeah.
one of the reasons why we love our conversations with the traditionalists, because the traditionalist will use whatever word they feel fits. And then we go, actually, that word means something different over here. We think it means this. Oh no, it doesn't mean that. All those words mean the same thing. No, they don't. We have different meanings for those things. We add some meaning behind those things, not just throwing them willy-nilly around like memory.
Hmm. That'll take some time.
Yes, yeah. Um, Something I want to ask you about, I guess, content is I've been exploring again because I keep coming back to it. I don't know why. Kinetic typography. Are you
Okay.
familiar?
Yes, I
Yeah,
love.
you love it. Okay, I'm good. I'm the same because I enjoy watching it. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily read. some of the stuff that's on there. I just enjoy watching what happens with the words. And I think when it's paired with music, it feels almost like entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's a really obscure feeling that I've watched some videos of lyrics of songs, and I don't actually listen to the lyrics, but I'm following the song with the lyrics on the screen. And there's one video that I've watched a lot in the past, and it's a kinetic typography lyric video, but the video of the lyrics has more views than the actual music video itself
Yeah, I'm not
because the kinetic typography was done so well, which makes me wonder communication. What sort of communication is it? Because I wouldn't say it's words, because I've been watching, this is going to sound really sad. I've been watching some of the Apple ads because they do a lot of kinetic typography in their ads. I have no idea what ads I'm watching because I'm not listening to the words. I'm not really reading the words, but I'm watching the entire ad because it just looks cool and
Yeah.
sounds cool. And so what sort of communication is that when I think about learning and the way that humans learn from experiences, what communication is coming across? Obviously, there's loads of specifying information, but what am I paying attention to? What is it that my
It's
attention is
almost
focused on?
it's almost more the experience itself.
But that's too broad.
I
I,
know, but I'm not sure how to get any finer, really.
and that's what's interesting.
Yeah.
How does that differ from all the other experiences? If you're looking at one scenario where you've got one person talking to another person, the person that is detecting all of the information has potentially the same experience as watching the ad. There is music, i.e., rhythmic noise. There is words or language, spoken language. There's identifiable symbols that can be detected, whether that's symbols as in facial movements, or symbols as in words on a screen, or symbols as in a movement of hands or some object being moved. There is identifiable symbols that have meaning that's being communicated, and it's going through various senses. And so
Mm.
if I'm telling someone something, the sensed information can still be categorized in very similar ways through the sense organs that we would identify traditionally, or through the sensing organ that we identify as a human, like organism. The organism, human, is sensing detectable specifying information. Great. But what is the focus? When I'm listening to someone, my focus is to try and sense the meaning that they're trying to convey to me. With this ad, what is my focus? What specific information am I focusing on? Obviously, it's a combination of because I'm a sensed organ and it's not just one
Yeah.
channel, then the other channel. But what is the focus? Like, where is my attention? And I think that if we could try and articulate that in a way that could be useful, may explain or try and help explain the phenomena that is the social labeling of ADHD.
Mm.
Because the more I think about the behaviors that are described with the social behaviors of ADHD, it's, oh, I need to have loads of things popping up on my screen, or I need to have music, or there needs to be a rhythm to this thing, otherwise I get bored and then I zone out. And I feel like there are things that some creators do that create a synergy with other viewers in the way that they pay attention to video content.
Is it? I couldn't remember the word, and then it's that sense within it's a sense within the body, the proprioception. Maybe it's that because when I'm listening or looking or perceiving that. Like I'm sensing and feeling the movement of the words, and they're in. So it's. I don't think that's quite right, but also
Proprioception, no, but yes, I think synergy is the word Kelso uses, and I think synergistic perturbations is the way it's described within. You remember the study with the autistic people rocking on chairs, synchronizing?
yeah,
I feel that could be where we're going
yeah.
because it's using sensory information, um, specific sensory information that can be detected by an individual that synchronizes with their expectational behaviors in the environment, with the relationship, the organism environment relationship within that environment measured. And so the music, the sound effects, and the visual information being synchronized, matching um, the organism, the human, the person, and finding the rhythm there. Yeah, similar with clapping. It's similar with clapping.
Ah,
You know when you get people to like all clap in sync after
mm.
like two, three, four, they everyone starts to.
Another
It's
one is also pentatonic scales.
yep,
Same thing.
metronomes.
We all match and sync to a pentatonic scale. The pentatonic. Wow, wow. Like I think there's a really well-known video. I cannot remember their name um, where he just stood there and gave the first note and then gave the second note as he moved down, came back up, and then went up, and everyone got the right note. Like everyone hit the right pitch. I can't remember the name.
So I reckon now that I'm thinking about this like this, I'm thinking it drastically differently, as you can tell, because as I started exploring this, this is the point of this podcast, by the way, for people listening. We talk about things we're not sure about, and then we're like, yeah, now I get it. Um, so the stages of realization. Uh,
Oh, what a
yes.
podcast name. Sorry. Marketing moment. Ooh, the stages of realization.
Yes. Yeah, so the synergies inside of various things that happen, dynamical systems, because what I'm visualizing right now is the Harry Potter bridge. Do you know what I mean? So there was a bridge scene in Harry Potter where the evil people are in black fogs, go round bridge, can't remember, and the bridge starts swaying side to side. If you haven't watched Harry Potter, it'll may go like straight up your head and you don't know. But basically, there's a bridge in London. Can't remember the name of the bridge, and it's got like cables that go to it, and it was swaying side to side. And what I found out is actually 15 years before Harry Potter was created, there was a situation where people started walking across the bridge, but the bridge started swaying, and the bridges are meant to sway, but not that much. And so what happened is people started walking in sync, like they were in March, without them trying or without them knowing, because the people were synchronizing with the bridge's sway. And because it kept doing it, the whole bridge started swaying in sync, moving further and further, and it was at risk of breaking. And bridges are deliberately designed not to hit this synchronized thing. You can see engineers test this all the time with buildings and finding resonance. And if they find a resonance, then poof, it breaks, like building falls down or bridge breaks or whatever. I reckon that synchronicity of human behavior and the system that's created with the sensed information in that environment is what the kinetic typography is doing with the visual
Yeah,
information, the auditory information, and the meanings behind the words that the
yeah,
individuals are viewing.
yeah.
That's a really nerdy way of describing why I like kinetic typography, but I like it.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's so cool.
There is a natural resonance with the sensed information, which is what we are focused and attuned to. And as the time goes on, as the experience moves on, we become more resonant to the video, which is why it becomes harder to disconnect from the video, which is where our dopaministic organs trigger because we are resonating with the experience. If we don't resonate with the experience, then we're not finding pleasure in the experience, which is what the dopamine system does. It's not that the dopamine is creating us to be addicted, it's the resonance between us and the sensed information. I love that. Yes. Oh, that's cool. That's beautiful. Whether it's right or not, I don't know, but
That's so cool. I love that. It also goes to the kind of like, I know we're going back to very basic ecological stuff, but it's almost like that width. If you look at the affordance field, that resonance increases that width.
pause, pause, pause. You say go back to the basic ecological stuff. Fields of affordances was like coined in like 2021, 2022.
Like, whatever.
But yeah, carry on. Field of affordances. Let's go.
But the resonance increases the width, like the importance of it. It brings that right up in the field so that you are resonating with that very and we say that, don't we, in our language? It's like, oh, I really resonated with that. I really resonated with that feeling and how that it's been interesting because as I've been just listening to people, I hear people go, oh, that afforded me to do this. And I'm like, wait, what? You said what? What?
Do you know about affordances? It's
Yeah,
like one of those.
I've seen people
You're
who
sitting there
just
going,
know.
"Do I now ask them all the questions that I want to, or
Yeah.
was it just a coincidence?"
Yeah, it was so interesting. Like the synchronicity of it was like, yeah, it provided me an opportunity. I'm like,
Did it
huh?
now? Did it now?
Now, say that. May I speak to you about our Lord and Savior?
So, so this may surprise you.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
AI,
Okay.
those two letters. I'm
Yeah.
us I have been using ChatGPT for the last couple of days as my main search engine.
Cool. I'm
Yeah,
going to remain quiet for now.
yeah. And I've been asking it questions in coaching to see how accurate it could be.
Hmm.
Actually, I'll start this conversation off by saying I actually went in to try and work out whether Morgan is suggested by ChatGPT. That's why I went there, because some people that I've been talking to in customer support saying, "Oh yeah, ChatGPT suggested Morgan." I'm like, "What? I've never found ChatGPT to get it to suggest Morgan. I've tried so many different ways for it to say, 'Hey, Morgan's a good option here,' and I can't find a way to do it. So I don't know how they found it, but they have. Um, but yeah." And so I've been trying to get ChatGPT to give me coaching answers, like asking it, well, how would you coach this or how would you coach that? And it's still very traditional.
Yeah.
But if I use a little bit of training and guiding with the way that I want it to coach,
Yeah. I know.
it's better than nothing. But
Yes.
the problem is, and this is where I think ChatGPT is great for a search engine, but awful as a designer of practice, is that it just repeats the same ones that I've given, or it just adjusts them really slightly and it doesn't really understand the meaning behind it, which is obviously what we've been saying for years about AI and predictive stuff. So I am, I mean, I was using Bing AI for search for ages, and Bing AI, for whatever reason, is being a little bit slower than normal. So I was like, you know what, let's just try ChatGPT. But yeah, so I'm using ChatGPT, OpenAI as a search engine, but as a coach, no, it just doesn't work.
It's no good if you don't have the coaching skills of your own. It just won't, it just can't quite get there. And it also, there have been changes to it that means it will just say, yes, you're awesome all of the time. And it's not very useful in that way. It's like, oh, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. I'm like, right, one, thanks. But two, I don't want you just to tell me my ideas are fantastic. That's useless. Like, I want you to challenge my thinking. I want you to use academic rigor in everything that I'm saying and push my stuff. Like, take it to a different level. Don't keep it where it is now. Like, I don't want you just to blow smoke up
Look,
my ass. I want you to just,
I knew that was coming.
like, give me more. Like, tell me where I would go, like, what I could do and how I could make this better and What would someone who doesn't believe this think? And what would this be? And how would that be? If you prompt it, it does an all right job, but it's still not, you can't, it's on its own, it doesn't work. It requires you as the perceiving individual to go, ah, ah, ah. And and if you do, and instead of just so I've had multiple experiences where I've used ChatGPT when I was just not in a frame of mind to meh as just a way of brainstorming and dumping ideas and just trying to figure out my thoughts on something, which means I am coaching myself basically. But I have something that affords me interesting answers. And then when they don't work, often people go, oh, it's rubbish. No, I don't like that. But I actually just go, yeah, I don't like that. Something's not right about that. And then it goes, oh, interesting. Why? I have trained it to ask me why and to go, what about it is bothering you? Like, let's have a few reflective questions. Now, the reflective questions are in surface level, but sometimes they poke on a really interesting point. And then I'm
Mm.
like, oh, yeah, that's true. Maybe I am just assuming this, or maybe I am getting stuck in this, or maybe this. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I can kind of move forward through that. Because often for me, I try to remove as much science as possible because presumed assumption that people can't cope with it. When really, actually, whenever I use the science, people are like, this is really well researched. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I know. I know it is. I had one person, it was so lovely and I enjoyed every minute. They messaged me going, this is AI bollocks. I want to hear what you have to say. And I'm like, I appreciate that this might sound like AI because it's directed, like I am being very forceful with my language. Read the article that it was attached to. Because the moment you do that, like just I invite you to keep reading the article to have a look at it. And then they messaged me and went, oh, shit, I'm really sorry. I'm like, it's totally fine. It was my directed behavior which caused that reaction, which is, I don't like, that's not my normal voice. My voice is fairly, like,
Mm. Fluid.
not, yeah, it's fairly fluid. Not, this is this thing. This is not what it is. But that was a bit sharper. And they noticed that. I'm like, yeah, cool. This is great. Read it. And they're like, oh, wow, this is really different. I didn't think about trauma in this way. I didn't think about it like this. But actually, like when I look at the papers that you sent me, I'm like, that makes so much more sense. I'm like, yeah, I know.
I was just fiddling around with ChatGPT because I had a thought. Um, with the way that I'm using it is a search,
Yeah.
just search. And I feel like the more I use ChatGPT as a search, like I say, I just did it and I searched my name. I said, "Who is Danny Hatcher?" And when I do it on Google, I get a few different things. I get a few different other people. When I do it on Bing, again, I get similar sorts of links, but I have to really go looking for it. And for ChatGPT, I just asked, "Who's Danny Hatcher?" And then it gave me a couple of paragraphs. I was like, "Can you just summarize it in bullet points?" And I mean, it's pretty accurate, but it's all me. It's all me. And what's interesting is Google has a couple of other Danny Hatchers. So I'm intrigued to see what would happen if you searched your name or your dead name, because obviously your dead name
Yeah.
has other other users. I don't know whether it would, because I imagine it would pick the main one, and you'd need to sort of try and find the other one because ChatGPT obviously uses what's published online. And so I'm curious to see how AI is indexing all of these things, which
So
bring, yeah,
I just searched you because I was intrigued to see what it would do.
yep,
It's found your interview with Ross Dawson immediately.
Ross Dawson.
Ross Dawson? Yeah. Thriving on overload.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that one. I was going to say, who is that? But because I've done lots of different interviews, very
Yeah,
all over
is
the
a
place.
UK-based independent researcher, educator, and content creator specializing in educational science, ecological psychology, and personal knowledge management. He holds a BSc in sports coaching and strength and conditioning, University of
Yeah,
Vitamin, blah, blah, blah. Emphasizes ecological dynamics, a framework from ecological psychology,
yeah,
blah, blah, blah. Context sensitive process shaped by the interaction between individuals and environments. That's not bad. Remember when we used to struggle just to get to freaking
yeah,
know
yeah,
what this is?
exactly.
I must admit, like, it gets it now, even like because I've trained it in my interpretation of that, plus adding in a couple of the papers, it now knows what I'm talking about.
I think the more
Fairly,
people that use it, the more obviously it'll be trained.
yeah. He's known for his educational content on YouTube. Obsidian and Zotero, his podcast, the Danny Hatch podcast, delves into learning experiences and educational science. Digital content
Didn't realize I had a podcast. I know we have a
yeah,
podcast.
I know, right? The Danny Hatcher pod. Yeah, you do actually have a podcast. Is
Oh
you
yeah, the one that I made like ages ago. Yeah, I must have found it. So I,
uh,
but what this makes me wonder is how AI is indexing differently from Google.
yeah,
Because if AI ChatGPT does become the next Google, as it were, how is it indexing? And the way that AI indexes will therefore impact the information we're shown first, which I think for those of us that use technology will drastically impact what happens, especially like for those marketing, because you wouldn't be marketing for Google SEO, you'd be marketing for AI.
yeah. It's so interesting. So I did my dead name. It was interesting. They went to an American football.
American football
I was
instead of the
wondering,
comedian.
yeah, because I was wondering whether it would go because of the context it has. It would try and frame it from a business perspective or from a comedy perspective, but it didn't. It went straight to the retired American football. That's so interesting.
So could you get it to find you? Could you try and like make it find you almost? Because that's what I was trying to do with Morgan. I was trying to make it find Morgan as a suggestion rather than telling it about Morgan.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just thinking like maybe
I
you'd ask
wonder
it.
because my branding is more simplicity specialist than me.
Yeah, so maybe ask it like who's in charge of Simplicity Specialist. See if it uses your dead name or your new name.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah. Uh, and I think
Oh,
well,
it found me and uses my current name,
it uses nice.
which is really cool. Shame about the image, but that's fine. We can fix that.
Image isn't
That's
what you
so.
wanted. So what did you ask it?
Who's the simplicity specialist?
And then it came up with you.
I was number one, yeah. So there was three. One was me. Um, one was Simplicity Specialist Finishes Ltd, Architectural Finishes,
Right?
and Simplicity Group, which is a financial services.
Okay. Interesting. So the for communication in search, I also like that you can ask AI to then like bullet point things um in like ChatGPT because a lot of the deaf community that I've been speaking to, they don't like AI. They're scared of it, partly because they don't understand it, but also they're older generation, so they're not technologically savvy anyway. Um, And the more I've been playing with ChatGPT, the more I think actually people could just search on ChatGPT and then say bullet point this, because what a lot of the people that are deaf, that English is their second language, struggle with is the massive blocks of text because they don't understand it, because
Yeah,
they don't hear the language. They can only lip read certain parts of the language. But bullet points, I reckon, would certainly help.
yeah, I think it would.
And so I reckon. the AI search engine, because that's what I'm going to call it, I reckon this AI search engine could be more effective than the Google search engine when it comes to results shown.
Yeah, because even with the AI inside of the search engines now, they're shit and they do massive paragraphs.
Yep. And then you have to like reword it. You have to ask AI to reword the answer,
Yeah,
which Bing doesn't do very well. It kind of like gives you a different answer to the question. I haven't
yeah.
tried Bard, but I didn't like Bard when I saw it. So, but we shall see. We shall see. Um, yeah. Anything else you want to add?
Don't think so. No.
Hmm. Well, hopefully we don't spend like 2 weeks doing nothing and then come back in like a month, but we'll see. Hmm.
Depends on how busy we are.
Yes, yes. Life and all that. Right. So, bye everyone.
Bye.